Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of Lunch and Learn, where we take a look at the weekly Torah portion and we offer a spiritual perspective on the Torah portion and how it relates to modern life today. For all of you joining us online, we welcome you. My name is Yisrael Kotler. You are joining into Chabad of Cary's live stream of the Lunch and Learn. If you do have any questions, they can be done via the chat box, and we will try to include them as part of the program today. The Torah portion today is one that, if you're a bar or bat mitzvah kid, and you're getting ready for your bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, and you look at this and it's like, oh no, I got this one. You know, you're hoping for a story. Let's have creation. Let's have the Exodus from Egypt. But certainly this is not one that people look forward to. And if you're trying to read the Torah as well, the most difficult words are in this week's Torah portion. And that is because they are so unusual. It is all sorts of skin conditions, a illness that took place in biblical times called Tsara'at. We've discussed it before. It has no relationship to the modern day illness called
leprosy.
Right, leprosy, or even psoriasis, I believe. Psoriasis is the word. This was clearly a spiritual illness that had a manifestation physically. It was not a physical illness. It was not something that was contagious. It was not something that was dangerous, but it was an indication that something was not well spiritually. So if you just look at the actual Torah portion, it's very hard to do. And instead, what you need to do is look at the Midrashim, look at the lessons, look at the laws behind it, and we will notice something very fascinating today about the nature of Tsara'at. It is well known that Tsara'at was associated with evil talk, and we will discuss today the psychology as well as the laws associated with it. So we begin with a verse from Tehillim, Psalms. Who is the man that desires life, who loves days to see good? What's the recipe? Guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking negatively. That is the number one recipe, it says, for good life, long life. Now diving into the opening of this week's parsha. Why don't you read Howard? And some of these words, if we go around the room, this week's Torah portion opens up.
And, excuse me. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, if a man has a seeth sapphic, that's not.
You're not supposed to understand this. I don't understand it either. Or a beheret.
Of the skin of his flesh, and it forms a lesion of Tsara'at
Yes.
on the skin of his flesh. He shall be brought to Aaron the Kohen, or to one of his sons, the Kohen. The Kohen shall look at the lesion on the skin of the flesh, and if hair is in the lesion has turned white, and the appearance of the lesion is deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is a lesion of Tsara'at. When the Kohen sees this, he shall pronounce him unclean.
So if they had to go to medical school for this. They had to go to Tsara'at school. Only Kohanim could do it. And people would go to the Kohen for their diagnosis, and it was very complicated. And we have almost really a parsha and a half that discusses different colors, and we have the greens and the blues and the oranges and the whites, and whether there's hair or there's no hair, and it looks burnt or it looks deep. And you look at it, and it's like, whoa, what am I supposed to do with this? What meaning does this have for us today? The words are so difficult because these words don't appear anywhere else in the Torah. It's not like they're common words. These skin conditions. Right. So this is where we see in the Talmud, in the oral tradition, that it is something miraculous. But the first indication, if someone says, the Midrash makes this association with evil talk, Leshon Haara, where in the actual verses do we see any indication that this has to do with Leshon Haara? What is the answer to that?
Well, we don't see what we read so far.
We don't. Well, so it's not at all in this parsha, nowhere. However, two other times in Torah where someone actually did get the Tsara'at, it was right after they spoke about something. One example is Miriam, who speaks about Moshe, and she actually meant well, but she spoke to a group of people. She tells Moshe she didn't believe the way he was handling his married life was correct. She immediately gets Tsara'at. And there's one other biblical story. Anyone know? Interesting, because Jonah also spoke bad about the Jewish people, which is the reason why he didn't even want to go on his mission, because he didn't want the Jews to look bad, because if the city of Nineveh did repentance, they would make the Jews look bad. That's why he didn't want to go. But doesn't mention him getting Tsara'at anywhere.
The sheep?
It's a he, the next one. First is Miriam. What's the second? It's Moses. Moses it is. When Moshe was at the burning bush, he refused to go for a number of reasons. God says, I'll give you a few signs. And one of them was a snake. Then God said, stick your hands in your chest, in your jacket pocket robe. And when he took his hand out, it said it was full of Tsara'at. It was full of white. Now, why would that be associated with Leshon Haara? Because Moshe's words just prior to that was, God, don't send me. They will never believe me. When I come and I tell the Jewish people that the time of their redemption has come, they will never believe me. He spoke Leshon Haara about the Jewish people. He immediately gets Tsara'at as well. Those are the two biblical examples where someone got Tsara'at as a result of speaking negatively about others. Now, truth be told, there are other examples later in Tanakh where people get Tsara'at where we don't see an association with Leshon Haara. There was a non-Jew who got Tsara'at later on. So I can't say this was across the board, but certainly in the 5 books of Moses, these are the only 2 examples I know. Any questions? Okay. So it is the Midrash and the Talmud that immediately makes the connection to evil talk when it comes to Tsara'at. And it tells us that we should understand that it is something miraculous. It is not something natural. And this would be the reason why it doesn't apply today. It only applied in a miraculous time when miracles happened. In the time of prophecy, in biblical times, in times where there was a temple. These were the times in which Tsara'at happened. Once we stopped having these open miracles, that no longer happened. Because it actually is something very incredible. It means that there's a strong connection between the physical and the spiritual. Right? I mean, we live in a world where there's often such a disconnect between the two. You prosper physically and you can be spiritually very not in a good place, right? Corrupt. Right. But in this context, one of the beauties of Tsara'at was it was an actual indication of something unhealthy happening that actually comes and manifests itself physically, which is pretty neat.
I hate to think what our government would look like today.
Exactly. But that also would be one of the reasons for it. We have many examples that when something became so widespread, it stopped being unusual and it stopped working. The other example, maybe in the Torah, of something unusual that stopped was when they used to test the lady that did adultery with those waters. And it said once the men started doing a lot of adultery as well and it was widespread, they stopped doing the whole system. It didn't work anyway.
Now, if you didn't have it in this code, there'd be something wrong with you.
Yeah, exactly. But here is where the Talmud makes the connection. You're wondering where it is. It's the Midrash on this week's Torah portion. Edith, you want to read? And in the Parsha, it discusses Tsara'at not only on a person, but on clothing. Not only on clothing, but on houses. You want to discuss the first case of mold on a person's house and having to... Here we go. Yeah.
This change that affects clothes and houses, which the Torah described with the general term of Tsara'at, is not a natural occurrence. Instead, it is a sign and a wonder prevalent among the Jewish people to warn them against Leshon Haara, undesirable speech. When a person speaks Leshon Haara, the walls of his house change color. If he repents, the house will be purified. If, however, he persists in his wickedness until the house is destroyed, the leather implements in his house upon which he sits and lies change color. If he repents, they will be purified. If persists in his wickedness until they are burnt, the clothes he wears change color. If he repents, they will be purified. If he persists in his wickedness until they are burnt, his skin undergoes changes, and he develops Tsara'at. This causes him to be isolated, and for it to be made known that he must remain alone so that he will not be involved in the talk of the wicked, which is folly and Leshon Haara.
Hey, you'd wonder how often it got to that point. I mean, it looks like the writing is on the wall very literally if, you're a few steps in. So the Midrash clearly says that there is something miraculous in nature transpiring over here.
What about
when Moses came down and found the Jews creating the idol and worshiping the idol when he came down from the mount?
So he defends them actually to God. I mean, he tells God, you can't destroy these people. They're your people. You got to stick it through with them. So there he's speaking positively about the people at the time. He's not speaking ill about them.
None of the people were...
So it's specifically related to Leshon Haara, specifically related to gossip. That is where, it's not any sin in general. It's specifically related to this sin. And as we see, in biblical times, there were all sorts of impurities that people would have that we don't have today. We know that today a Kohen doesn't go to a cemetery. Traditionally, a Kohen doesn't go. In biblical times as well, a Kohen, if he came in, or anyone that came in touch with a dead body, could not be in the same camp as the temple. Even today, many Jews won't go on the Temple Mount because they've come in contact with a dead body. All right, so that was considered you have to leave Camp 1. There were other things you had to leave Camp 2, and there were other things that you have to leave the entire Jewish people, and that was Tsara'at. Tsara'at was the most severe form of spiritual unclean. He uses the word unclean. Unclean is not a good word. Spiritually impure, but as a result, you had to stay outside. Why specifically this form? I'm going to fast forward a little bit later in the page. Why is the Mitzorah, Susan, you want to read? Why is the Mitzorah different? Sorry, the consequences of having Tsara'at, a few things down.
All the days the lesion is upon him, he shall remain unclean. He is unclean. He shall dwell isolated. His dwelling shall be outside the camp.
And the Talmud writes there?
Why is the Mitzorah different from all other ritually impure persons in that the Torah said, he shall dwell alone. Outside the camp shall his habitation be. With his gossip and slander, he separated a husband from his wife, a man from his neighbor. Therefore, said the Torah, he shall dwell alone. So
the dwelling alone comes some time for a little rehabilitation, a little bit of time to reflect alone and not have the ability to speak Leshon Haara. And after having that experience, afterwards, they are able to integrate back into society as a healthy, functioning member of society. So it was a rehabilitation process. Okay. Now, the Midrash here discusses why such a severe problem for Leshon Haara. And this is a Midrash on the verse in Psalms that says, sharp arrows of the warrior, coals of broom. And the Midrash writes on that. Brian, do this next one.
All other weapons smite from close quarters, while the arrow smites from a distance. So it is with slander. It is spoken in Rome and kills in Syria. All other coals, when extinguished, are extinguished without and within. But coals of broom are still burning within when they are extinguished without. So it is with words of slander. Even after it seems their effects have been put out, they continue to smolder within those who heard them. It once happened that a broom tree was set on fire and it burnt 18 months, winter, summer, and winter.
Look, I don't know what a broom tree is. The Midrash need not be literal. What is broom? I don't know. A broom tree?
The kind
Okay.
that are in the desert.
Okay.
They're dry.
But this need not have any elaboration, this idea that the words afterwards have such a deep effect. There's the famous story where someone ran to the Chafetz Chaim and asked, Rabbi, how can I do teshuvah for speaking gossip? He's mentioning a specific story. And he answered, go take the pillow. Take your regular pillow at home and run outside and shake it. All right, in those days, Rabbi said it. You listened right away. Went and go shook the pillows. Came back. What's next? Go gather them all.
Get the feathers.
And the idea was we certainly have to do our best to retrace our steps, but it is impossible, and this is the damaging effect of words. A lot of these ideas we have done before in Lunch and Learn. What I'm going to say now is something new, and this is fascinating. There was a medieval scholar by the name of the Tur, Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher, and his commentary on Torah is very, very short. He will often talk about numerical values of words. He has a running commentary throughout the Torah. He'll do numerical values. He'll do the first letter is this and the last letter is that, and that alludes to this idea. All these sorts of hints to ideas within the Torah. It's not like Maimonides or Nachmanides or Rashi that gives a longer interpretation. It's a few words, and he gives an insight connecting this idea to another one. He doesn't even explain himself very well. He just makes the connection. There's a fascinating example of that in this week's Torah portion. The verse says, and the person with Tsara'at, his garment shall be torn, his head shall be unshorn, and the word in Hebrew is his head, virosho yihye parua, has to be unshorn. He wasn't allowed to get a haircut for a period of time. So the word in Hebrew is virosho, like the word rosh, which means head. Virosho, and his head, referring to his hair, has to remain untorn. The Tur, Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher, writes, oh, by the way, there are 4 times in the entire Tanakh where there's that same word virosho. Just imagine this, everybody. There's no Google in those days.
Right.
All right, there's no search, there's no Google. The Torah is not today. If I want to find out how many times it says the name Yisrael, boom, in 1 second I have it. If you want to find out the numerical value of your name and find out what other words in Torah have that numerical value, boom, you can do that instantly. This is not just the 5 books of Moses. He scans the entire Tanakh, and he knows that the word virosho only appears 4 times. So Gazon, let me explain. He's not referring to Rosh or Rosho. Specifically, virosho, and his head. And he says these are the 4 examples. He doesn't explain himself very well. That's for us to do. Okay? What does he explain? Well, what are the 4 examples? So here they are. Do you want to read?
Sure. The word virosho, his head, appears in total of 4 times in the entire Hebrew Bible. Once here, the second is
Umigdal
virosho b'shamayim. Come, let us build ourselves a tower with its head, its top in the heavens.
All right, what is this? This is a good game. What is this? Tower of Babel. All right, so its head should be in the heavens. All right, 3rd time.
A 3rd time, and he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the ground, and its top reached to heaven. Virosho magia hashemayim.
All right.
The
That
4th,
one is famous, Jacob's ladder. 4th is the one that we're like, oh, I don't know this one. And I didn't know this one offhand. I can't say I'm that fluent in the entire book of Job.
The 4th is in the book of Job. Do you know this from time immemorial, since man was placed on the earth, that the triumph of the wicked is short, and the joy of the flatterers is but a moment? If his glory ascends to the heavens, and his head reaches the clouds, like a dream he will fly away, and they will not find him, and he will wander away like a vision of the night.
All right, what is Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher trying to tell us by this interesting fun fact? There's 4 viroshos. This is one of them.
What was the first one now?
From
Let's build a tower, reach the heavens.
The first one was about the legions.
Right. If you go in chronological order, the first is the Tower of Babel. The way he writes it is the first is here, and the other, which is his head has to be unshaved. His head has to be unshaved after Tsara'at.
Shaven after Tsara'at.
Right. That would be the first.
All right.
Jacob, Bavel, Job. He's telling us something. He's not just quoting verses.
Right.
Something about having your head in the clouds.
Yeah. That is what each one of them. It's not just its head. We have a tower that's going in the heavens. We have a ladder going into the heavens. And we have the last one saying that the attempt is to get to the heavens. However, like a dream, who will fly away and they will not find him. And what it is saying here is?
There's some kind of humility and connection to God.
There's a beautiful story of the 5th Chabad Rebbe, where I want to make sure I get the names here Correct. I'm one of the Chabad Rebbe's. I don't know which one it was. He had 2 children. The 2 children were playing, and it just so happened the younger one was taller than the older one. Anyone know families like that? Happens? All right. So what happened? That wasn't very fun for the older one. So one day the older one pushed the other one down into a ditch and said, "Ha ha, I'm taller now." Dad's looking from the window. Gets called over. He's, want to hear what a parenting lesson here is? What does he do? He brings a stool. And he gives him the stool. He says, "Go stand on top of this. Now you can be taller." In other words, there's 2 ways to be taller. One is to truly make yourself great and do acts of greatness and to do mitzvahs and to soar spiritually. Of course, there's an easier way as well. What is that? To push others down. In each of these verses, the Torah says in the Tower of Babel, this attempt to have your head in the sky, versus the other one of Jacob, which is truly praying and reaching a spiritual height. So we have the idea of Leshon Haara coming, the Torah is telling us the psychology behind it. The psychology behind it is an attempt to reach a high place when unfortunately the person themselves doesn't feel so good about themselves as it is, so they need this in order to get to a higher place. This helps them have that feeling. Instead of looking at the verse from Jacob, how can I grow spiritually? How can I immerse myself in Torah? How can I do mitzvahs that will give me truly stepping on the stool or stepping on the ladder? And to further, and again, this is just one interpretation. There might have been other reasons for these 4. But looking at the 4 verses, that seems pretty telling. You started off, Howard, when you read that first verse. And it said, if any man has a se'et, a sapachat, or a beheret on their flesh, they have to go to the Kohen. And I mentioned that each one is a name of a skin discoloration. All right? And if you look in the Talmud and Rashi, it will explain one is snow white, one is egg white. There are different levels of discolorations. But in the Torah, everything has a deeper meaning as well. It's not just the name of a color, but we have to look at the root of each one of those words. And again, it tells us something about the psychology of Leshon Haara. Let's do each 3. Laseit in Hebrew, linsoa laseit, means to uplift. That's what the word literally means. Yes, it means a discoloration, but the actual meaning of the word is se'et. Lift up, to become higher, to feel higher. So the Torah, by having the word se'et, alludes to the fact that this is where it comes from. Next, sapachat. Lispoach in Hebrew means to attach. What do you think the meaning there is? Again, this is the psychology behind evil talk. If the first reason for it is to make yourself high, what is the second reason for it?
To attach to somebody
Exactly,
who's
to
already high?
Well, I mean, truly high or doing the same thing?
Well, name names of big people or...
Oh, so to be in a certain... Right. Well, here, this word doesn't mean high. Sapachat is a different idea. It means to attach. Okay. It's we're leaving the high, Pete. Okay. This is the idea of having a club, having a clique, having a group of people, being part of. That is one of the great reasons we love to tell stories. We love to gossip. We have company upon which that we can talk to people about. It's it's unhealthy. It's destructive. But the Torah is giving us the psychology. What is one of the reasons for it? The first reason people do it might be in order to feel better about themselves. The second is in order to join a group. To fit in. To fit in. And again, yeah. Support as well.
To support each other in your beliefs.
Correct. And now if that remains positive, then fantastic. If the result is negative, then we say, no, this is not where it is. This is not where it is. And this is really the third idea. And the third one is bahir. Bahir in Hebrew means clear. What is the reason for talking? because you reached a point where you have such clarity in a negative way about what really happened. Meaning, you have such clarity about what really happened, so what do? Tell this person, tell that person, tell that person. If a person, on the other hand, wants to truly find out the best, what is the best thing to do?
Go directly.
Go directly to the person and find out the story.
So you're saying talking behind somebody's back?
Exactly. It is so both sapachat and the last one all have to do with this idea of, rather than trying to solve the specific problem in a constructive, positive way, let's do it in a way of sapachat. Let's do it in a way where I feel that I have baheret. And the Torah is telling us from here that these are the three psychological reasons why there can be Leshon Haara. And the antidote to that for all three would be to involve oneself in Torah and mitzvahs, to truly uplift yourself and not need the talk to feel better. Again, to stand on the stool, not have to push others down. To not specifically join a group that is speaking Leshon Haara, because that is destructive. And if there's something that has to be accomplished, the first step is always to first find out, and to always ask questions and not assume that what I know is absolutely right, not to believe I have the bahir, I have the perfect clarity, to have the humility to ask those questions and have the humility to look for solutions. Now, moving on, and where are we on time, Debbie? 12:15. Okay. There's a beautiful midrash that says that Leshon Haara hurts three people. You've heard this before. Who are the three, of course?
The
speaker, the listener, and the person it's about. And the object, the person it's about. And we understand why the speaker is involved there, because they are doing the sin of Leshon Haara. As we'll see in a moment, there are mitzvah that have to do with not listening to Leshon Haara. That's the hardest one. That's hard.
I've done that.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult, and that's where you just have to say, hey, I don't want to be part of the sapachat over here. I don't want to be part of the sa'id. I don't want to be part of the behirat. I want to go to Jacob's ladder. That's where I'm going to. I'm going to go learn some Torah. Then there is the third piece over here. The third piece is the person it's about. Now we understand why literally you hurt the person it's about, because you've now destroyed their name. The Midrash, though, writes something, and the Chassidus speaks about something very, very deep. And let's go around and read this. Where are we up to?
Talk kills three people: the speaker, the listener, and the one who is spoken of. The speaker obviously commits a great sin by speaking negatively of his fellow. The listener, too, is a partner to this evil. But one is the one who is spoken of, affected by their deed. Are his negative traits worsened by the time that they are spoken of? Indeed, they are. A person may possess an evil trait or tendency, but his quintessential goodness, intrinsic to every soul, strives to control it, conquer it, and ultimately eradicate its negative expressions and redirect it as a positive force. But when this evil is spoken of, it is made that much more manifest and real. By speaking negatively of the person's trait or deed, the evil speakers are, in effect, defining it as such. To their words, they grant substance and validity to its negative potential. But the same applies in the reverse. Speaking favorably of another, accentuating his or her positive side, will aid him to realize himself in the manner that you have defined him.
It's a beautiful idea that it can become, in a sense, a self-fulfilling prophecy. We know stories, sadly, where someone might have been bullied or called certain names, and the result is, if that's the way people think of me, then I must be that, and I might as well live it, meaning that we all have inside of us good and bad. We all have those tendencies. We all have those traits. The question is, which one of those traits are going to be exercised? Which one are going to be more manifest in the real world? So we often think it depends on which ones we exercise. The Kabbalah here is saying that other people too have the ability to exercise those traits. By focusing on the negative of someone, you are giving life to those. And by focusing on the good, you're bringing to light the good inside of them. This is because, of course, we know that we have the image of God inside of us. And if God spoke words and created a world, should it surprise us that we can speak words and at least change a person and bring out their good? And what Kabbalah here says, there's really two ways of looking at this. There's the natural way and there's the Kabbalistic way. The natural way is this only works if the person finds out that that's what you were saying about them. If that's what they think of me, I might as well be it that way. What Kabbalah here is saying is, guess what? Even if that person doesn't ever find out that you said that, in some spiritual way, your words contained an energy which brought out either the good or bad in them. And we just think about the world today. We think about the media today and how much schmutz is out there and how much of that schmutz might unfortunately result in more schmutz.
There's a lot of evil out there.
And imagine if we were reporting more good out there, how that would have, have more good in the world.
We have to find it first.
Right. What?
We have to find it first.
Right. But is there a lot of good out there to report if you, yeah.
Of course there is.
There is.
But we do have to speak out against.
Against the evil.
We do that have to do as well. No, we do have to speak out against it. However, the best example, election season is coming up, and every year it comes earlier and earlier, every cycle. And we have to be privy to all the personal schmutz, and there's so much of that as opposed to discussing more and more about issues. And that is another, by the way, difference, I think, with Sapachat and Baheret. When it's discussing issues, then it can be done to the person. When it's talking about the person, that will be more of an area of Leshon Haara. Now, if this is true, that,
Roger has something
Sure.
to contribute. He says we may be listening to gossip without knowing it. Is that possible? Not only spiritually brought out, but it can affect how others treat that other person without him or her knowing why.
we are around, it's difficult to avoid gossip. You may be listening to gossip without knowing it. And Roger, do you mean that we...
And the previous comment, the question, of course, is to have enough information to be able to distinguish between what is true and what is simply gossip when it is spoken.
Correct, and that is exactly why it is important to have the Baheret we spoke about earlier, to search for the clarity. And how does one search for the clarity? By speaking specifically to the individual to find out the story. That is the best way to achieve Baheret when you are unsure. And that's such a beautiful, it's difficult to do, but if we train ourselves anytime, I just want to call the person directly and find out the story. Let's have a great one-on-one. That's such a great way to train ourselves into not hearing hearsay. Yeah.
But just because something is true doesn't mean it's not gossip. Something could be true and very much gossip.
Right.
So.
Correct. And that is really where we get to the next thing, and we have to turn the page at this point. One last note, the same, if we said that speaking ill brings out the negative, guess what? Guess who it applies to as well? The note at the bottom, oneself. One can speak Leshon Haara about themselves as well, because that too is you identify with the not good inside of you. Okay, you said what happens if it's true. So this is more, we're now shifting from the psychological to the legal. There are actually 3 different categories in halacha, in Jewish law. The first is called rechilut. Rechilut means telling stories. It doesn't even necessarily mean bad. It just means going from person to person telling stories that are just not relevant. I heard a famous story how someone said, "Oh, I happened to see Joe mentions to his friend, I happened to see Joe at the gym yesterday." All right, innocent comment enough, right? The problem was this person actually asked Joe to come to their house that day. Joe, for whatever reason, gave an excuse they weren't feeling well. And now They hear that Joe was at the gym that day. What happened as a result of rechilot? Something horrible. So a lot of times the words themselves might be very innocent
And true.
and true, and innocent, true, but it's just talking about people's lives where it's of no purpose, you know?
Part of it wasn't true.
Right, correct. I'm not saying he should have or shouldn't have told a lie, but as a result, you broke a friendship or whatnot here. And it can be something as innocent. I heard X and Y bought a new car, they remodeled their home. And no, we can decide where is the line where it's okay to talk good news about people. Certainly, it is. But we have to be careful just about telling stories. And look, it's a human urge. I have it. It's exciting to tell news. A wise person once told me, he says, when I was getting married, you're having a Shabbat table, you know. A wise Shabbat table is where they discuss issues, you know. Less so is they discuss things, less so they discuss people. What should be the discussion issues? Torah, talk issues at table. A little bit less, all right, talk things. Don't talk people. And it's a beautiful principle to have at dinner tables, Shabbat tables, Pesach tables. Let's aim for issues, at the very least, things. But a nice general principle of not talking people at table get-togethers. Again, of course, if it's a good word that you specifically know that everyone wants. Okay? And sometimes, by the way, even saying something good, if you're telling it to someone that you know, someone's a little envious of someone and you say something good, by the way, I heard they got that promotion. Correct. So you've said something good news about someone, but the context here is almost lobbing a softball for someone to hit out of the park in a negative way here. So one has to be careful. So the first category is rechilut, which simply means telling stories, innocent, true. Then there's Leshon Haara, and that is negative talk about someone that is not true. And finally, Motzi Shem Ra is, what did I say about Leshon Haara? Excuse me. Leshon Haara is negative talk that is true. Motzi Shem Ra is a third category, derogatory talk about someone that is not true. So just because it's true doesn't mean it's not Leshon Haara. Actually, it's only Leshon Haara when it's true. If it's not true, then there's another name for it, Motzi Shem Ra. Okay. We only have a few minutes left. Are there specific questions about the nature of Leshon Haara rather than, and we do this every 2 years, I do this class, I change it around a little bit. I added in, but are there questions about it rather than doing some of these guidelines? You will notice an expression called avak Leshon Haara. Avak in Hebrew means dust. It means the trace or the dust of Leshon Haara. And that would be where you say, I don't even want to tell you what happened to X, Y, or Z. Yeah. But you've now opened the can, and from there it's already dangerous. So that would be called avak Leshon Haara.
But isn't a lot lost if I tell you a story and you repeat the story? That story is not the same anymore.
Absolutely.
By the time it gets around the table, you don't even know what you're talking about.
Right, and that's why the best precaution against that is not to do that from the first place, which is what happens. I think what's very difficult is the prohibition about listening to Leshon Haara. Again, just as a reminder, it's just so challenging. Where are we up to in the readings? If caught in a group.
If caught in a group of people who are speaking Leshon Haara, one should try and leave the group or change the topic. If stuck there, one, decide in one's heart, mind, not to accept the Leshon Haara as true. Two, do not enjoy Leshon Haara because the subject is being shamed, it's a funny story, etc. Three, do not pretend to agree or accept the Leshon Haara. Make a face. Don't make eye contact, or at least with light.
When you have absolutely no choice but to leave. These are tough. These are tough.
Like this.
Yeah. All right. I mean, you can do that as well. Yeah.
I have. I don't gossip.
You put your
Don't
hands
tell me.
over your ears.
I do.
Right.
I make it very clear.
Yeah.
Don't continue the story. I don't want to
Right.
hear it.
And of course, we can't finish the class without.
Roger has the question, what advice can you offer in sharing good news about others, like achievements, outstanding attributes admirable traits.
What do we say around the room over here? Sharing with others good news about yourself or other people. I imagine other people. They got a promotion, they got a new car, their kid got into college.
Because you're not
I don't
allowed to
think
tell
I
me.
should.
You
Make
don't
a
share.
difference.
Let's
No,
It's
you can
hard.
share it as long as it's got a good purpose. If you're saying it to someone who got passed over for a promotion, then it's, you know, it's.
Say
it's
someone
generating
getting
something
married to
negative.
somebody who just got disengaged.
right,
We don't
right.
do that, but I mean, under normal circumstances, knowing the person would share in the joy of the simcha that you're discussing, I don't see it.
So,
Ryan?
It's selective speaking.
so whose news is it?
Well, yeah, exactly. Part of what we were talking about is you need to resist talking about third parties. Because it could be, even though they're good news, they may not particularly want that good news spread around. You know,
Right.
they don't want to be bragging or what have you, perhaps. Or perhaps it's not good news to the receiver. Although, in cases like what you bring up, you know, an engagement or whatnot, that's hard to resist.
That's going to become public as well. And there is a rule about when
Oh.
something is going to become public, that is a different story, when something is public. So there is a difference in halacha, both with positive and negative. Now, when something is on the news, it's not Leshon Haara. Now, that doesn't mean we should go around telling every negative story on the news. There's a separate issue there. We're spreading schmutz. But it no longer is technically considered Leshon Haara if it's out there. It's a separate issue.
As long as you didn't put it out there.
Yeah, as long as you put it out there. And just to finish this, we certainly don't have time for today, and that is certainly when it comes to helping someone get over their problems, constructive criticism, trying to solve a situation, these are times we do talk, but the rules over there is, the number one rule is we first go to the person themselves.
Right, don't
If-
attack anybody personally ever.
So we see here some amongst the conditions. Why don't we read this quickly and then I'll go to the question.
Where are we?
We'll do the when speaking about another may be allowed.
To influence the subject to improve by discussing his faults with someone who can help him.
So there you are telling one other person if you think that you cannot help, but this one other person can because they are in the unique position that has the ability to help this person out. Okay?
To prevent someone from being harmed by the subject or help someone who is already harmed by the subject.
God forbid you're hiring a babysitter and someone knows some information. We need another class on what's hearsay, how much do you have to know before you talk. I think that we need another class on that, 3.
To help end a dispute between individuals which could escalate to the community level.
So there also with one other person could be allowed to help, again, end a dispute.
To help others learn from the subject's mistakes.
Right, so if you use a lot of times we'll use an example of someone on the Torah who made a mistake for the purpose of learning from that mistake. But there's a lot of conditions over here. Here are the conditions, finally finish with this.
The information cannot be exaggerated or embellished, even is the only way to get the listener to heed the information.
Right, so sometimes what will automatically happen is when you tell the story, you want to make a emphasis.
Right.
So it will grow. You won't just say the facts. Yeah.
When someone either speaks or requests Leshon Haara for constructive purposes, they should state the constructive purposes. Otherwise, the other party in the conversation will think they are speaking Leshon Haara without any halachic justification.
So I'm only telling you this right now, and you're the only one I'm telling, no one else, because I feel you are uniquely in the position to help here. I want to be clear, I don't want to speak Leshon Haara, and this is only because so now that you've even given that clarification, it helps you and it helps the person.
Would that answer Roger's comment? He says, what about compliments such as, that Rabbi Cutler really knows his Torah. He really helped me to see things in a new light. He is wise. So if you preface that by, today I attended Lunch and Learn. It was really great. It was so helpful, and this is why.
Right. So
you want to attend. It was sort of like an invitation.
Yeah, I think if it can lead to people coming, people learning Torah, then it shouldn't be about me. It should be about lunch and learn, and it should be about what we have going on over here. It's now, we have a great discussion. And even there, you can make it about the discussion and the people and the whole atmosphere. It doesn't have to be about the person.
What if somebody is ill? And it's a friend of yours, and he or she, you see that he or she needs help, and you ask him, is it all right if I ask some people,
Correct.
I don't.
Well, you've asked them first. So before you've gone around
Yeah.
asking, but then it's no longer Lashon. You now have their okay.
He's not
And finally,
saying-
and the people have to leave. The last condition here is very important to first make a self-judgment. Self-judgment. Why am I saying this? Is there any emotions involved whatsoever? Is there any personal agenda here whatsoever? Have any other issues with that person that I'm including this into? So here is where this is a very difficult question, but we ask ourselves that beforehand to make sure that when we do speak, it is purely objective and purely productive. But again, there are more conditions in addition to this. We don't have time to properly get into that. Any other questions from the online audience?
All right, let's check it out. I want to thank everybody. We see Baruch Hashem is the comment. And I think we had a really nice chat for the first chat we've ever done.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for our live audience as well.
And we should tell and stress to folks that this is going to be on Tuesdays when available, live stream, that you can invite people to come to Nissan Communications producer Amnon Nissan. Thank you so much for doing this for us. And there is a live chat, and you could probably send Rabbi Cutler questions beforehand if you have it.
Or afterwards as
after.
well. You can email me.
Any kind of feedback, you
Everything.
can email. And in the future, we may have some PDF downloads of the printouts coming
Beautiful.
from Chabad of Cary.
Beautiful.
So, and this, did you mention this is a series of?
This is a series of 10 classes, God willing, each on the Parsha for the next 10 weeks. So thank you, everyone. for
Thank
joining
you,
in.
Amnon. Thank you, Rabbi, and all our listeners. Bye-bye.
Give me 1 second.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVBI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.